Hi friends, so many of you already know about me being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in July, but a lot of my friends and family don't. So in honor of Diabetes Awareness Month, I wanted to share my diagnosis story and hopefully help those of you who don't live closely with anybody who has type 1 understand a little bit about what living with this disease is like. So, oh boy, where do I start? So in July, I started noticing that some things were very wrong. I was very tired, exhausted, not just sleepy, but like weak. I was having trouble lifting things at work. I was getting winded really easily, and I have a job that requires me to move relatively heavy things every day. So it was becoming very apparent that something was wrong. My appetite was pretty screwed up as well. I wasn't eating much, and I had also been battling some pretty severe depression in the months leading up, so I kind of just chalked it all up to that and didn't really think much of it. I also noticed, I can't really pinpoint when it started, but my hair was falling out. Like every time I would shower, there would just be clumps of hair coming out in my hands, and I was worried that maybe it was the dye that I was using or the fact that I wasn't eating very much. I wasn't really sure, but I kind of swept these things under the rug, thinking the simplest explanation is depression. And I also didn't have a primary care doctor at the time, so there wasn't really a very easy way for me to just go ask somebody about this stuff. So one of the other things that was happening is I got really thirsty, like really, really desperately thirsty. I'm not just, talking about, drinking a lot of water. I'm talking about you feel like you could, drink a gallon of water and then 5 minutes later just feel absolutely parched. It was driving me nuts having to carry a water bottle everywhere with me, and that makes you pee a lot as well. So I was like getting up in the middle of the night to chug water and go to the bathroom multiple times a night, which is very unusual for me. I've never really been a water drinker before. And when this started, oddly enough, I was actually kind of glad, because I've, been wanting to start drinking more water over the past few years, and there was a part of me that was like, oh good, I've finally learned how to enjoy water. But this went on for a while, and it actually started to become annoying. So then I started to notice like a pressure on my sternum. It was like kind of painful, but it mostly just felt like pressure. And I started to have pain in my abdomen as well. It felt like it was the worst whenever I drank a cold liquid, and I was a little bit worried that I might have like a stomach ulcer or something. So at that point I was kind of thinking, if this doesn't go away on its own, I'm probably going to have to go to urgent care. So on July 10th, I went to work like a normal day. I was really depressed that morning and just really not feeling it. I was a little queasy, and I decided to just leave work because it wasn't working. So I kind of stretched the truth a little bit and told them that I was throwing up, which wasn't far from the truth. I was very nauseous, but I knew they would have to send me home if I said that I was throwing up. So I did that, and I knew that they were probably going to ask for a doctor's note. So I was like, well, I'll just pop into urgent care on my way home. So I'm thinking I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna sleep for a little bit, maybe like run an errand if the nausea has worn off, and then I'm going to go play video games with my dog and just kind of chill at the house. So I go into the urgent care and I tell them what's going on. I tell them about the stomach pain and all that because I just figured while I'm here, I might as well be honest with them about these real problems that I'm having, you know, not just to get the work note or whatever. So the doctor like feels my abdomen. She like listens to my lungs, and then she says, we would like to do a urine test. And I thought, that's odd. I don't think I have like a UTI or anything, but okay. So I do the urine test and go back into the exam room, and the doctor comes in after me, and she has this kind of like serious body language and look on her face, and she tells me that they found sugar and ketones in my urine, and she asks me if I have a history of any diabetes in my family. At the time, I didn't know that there was any, so I just told her, no, I don't think so. And I was thinking, this has to be some kind of mistake. Like, I drank a large sweet tea earlier. Like, could that have been what caused it? No, it wasn't. So she then tells me that she wants to have one of the nurses do a finger prick to check my blood sugar. So they do that. And she tells me that since I have ketones in my urine and my blood sugar was as high as it was, she said, I would like you to go straight to the emergency room because you need fluids and an insulin drip, and we think you might have diabetes. So I was just in like complete shock at the time. I think I started to cry, like kind of silently, just tears rolling down my face. So I take the paperwork they give me and I get in the car and I call one of my best friends because I'm suddenly like, oh my God, I don't know how long I'm going to be at the hospital. I have a dog at home. So I call up one of my best friends, and before I could even, ask him if he could go let my dog out, I just burst into tears and started telling him that I might have diabetes and I have to go to the emergency room and I'm scared. And he comforted me and told me not to worry about the house, not to worry about the dog. He would take care of it. At the time, my husband was away on a business trip on the other side of the country, and it was going to be another 5 to 7 days before he was home, so I was completely alone. So I drove myself to the hospital and parked, and about the time that I'm walking up to the emergency room, I started to feel the fatigue really catching up with me. I had to stop a few times walking up to the emergency room to catch my breath. By this point, I was actually starting to wheeze kind of and really struggle to take in a whole breath. I could tell I was pretty sick at that point. I was having a hard time navigating the hallways. I felt confused and kind of foggy, and it took me kind of a while to find the emergency room. And once I did, I told them what was going on, and they immediately put me on IV fluids and an insulin drip, as well as some electrolytes drips as well. So I had 3 IVs going at once. They couldn't tell me when I'd be able to leave at first. I heard maybe just one night, and then that turned into maybe 2 nights, and then it turned into we don't know. It depends on when the doctor says you can go. And so it was just kind of nebulous. I was just stuck there for the time being. And the first night is actually a little bit foggy in my memory, probably due to a combination of high blood sugar affecting my cognitive function, as well as just like the shock and honestly the trauma of it all. I don't know if any of you have ever had to spend a night in a hospital by yourself, but it's traumatic, you know, being like having your fingers pricked and blood drawn every 2 hours around the clock. You've just been told that you have this incurable disease that could potentially kill you one day or render you blind or, you know, have to have limbs amputated. So I was devastated and just felt like it was a nightmare and was waiting for the moment where I was going to wake up and realize that none of it was real. I remember laying there staring at the wall while the nurses were pricking my finger and just begging them to just let me die. I just kept saying, if I can't have my old life, I don't want one at all. You know, I already was struggling with depression and really didn't want to live before all of this. And there was no way I was going to be able to manage multiple daily injections and adhere to a diet and a routine every single day with such poor mental health. So I ended up spending 5 days in the hospital being treated for DKA and 3 more waiting on a bed at a psychiatric facility. DKA stands for diabetic ketoacidosis. This is a condition that occurs when there's not enough insulin in the body for the cells to make use of the sugar that's in your blood. So your cells can't get energy, they can't regenerate while you're in this state. Your blood sugar continues to build up and your body starts breaking down fat, desperately trying to get energy from somewhere. So when fat starts getting broken down that rapidly, it releases what are called ketones into your blood. And the ketones, under normal circumstances, trace amount of ketones, I think, can just be passed in your urine. But when you are in DKA, they're building up so quickly that your body cannot pass them. And it actually literally can make your blood acidic. And if it goes untreated, it can do serious organ damage and eventually lead to coma and probably death. They told me in the ER that it was a good thing that I came in when I did, because I would have been in a bad spot had I gone another day. I likely would have passed out in my house alone, where I would have been for the next few days until my husband came home, and he probably would have just found me dead. So the stupid work policy probably saved my life. Being in the hospital is pretty miserable. I had to sleep for like 3 days with multiple IVs, and they wouldn't let me eat or shower at first. I felt disgusting. I smelled bad. I was alone. I had no one there with me for the first night. I kind of just laid there crying like a scared toddler. I'm sure I annoyed the shit out of other patients around me, sniffling all night. The next day, my best friend, who was looking after my dog, showed up and brought me some things. He sat with me for hours and watched them prick my fingers and draw blood and give me IVs and just, you know, watched me cry. Like, watched me in this state that I don't think anyone else has ever witnessed before. Like, me just broken down to my core. Like, ugly crying. Unshowered. So on the 3rd day, my husband finally got to me. He had been rushing to get a flight home and was just like, it took him like a day to find a flight, and then he just spent the next couple days in airports, like terrified, not understanding what was going on with me, just like rushing to get there. He came straight from the airport to the hospital. So he ended up spending the next few days with me there, and we watched House, like probably 2 or 3 whole seasons of House, and he slept in the armchair next to me for the next few days. I can't stress enough how much of a blessing he and my friends have been throughout this whole ordeal. They assured me that while navigating this new life seemed like an insurmountable task, I was not going to have to do it alone. There was one day in the hospital where I just had a full-on panic attack, you know, crying and blubbering and gasping for air and telling my husband, I can't do it, you have to help me, like, please, please help me, I can't do it by myself, I can't give myself the shots, I can't do it. And he just held my hands and told me that he would be with me through every injection. He would learn how to give me the shots himself, he would learn how to take care of me, and we would just deal with it together. So, when it was time to go home, I was terrified to be in charge of my own insulin. What I don't think people realize that don't have diabetes or have never lived around anyone who has it is that insulin is necessary, but it's also pretty dangerous. Even a slight overdose in insulin can cause your blood sugar to go too low. And if you don't treat that low, sorry, my computer's doing weird things. If you don't correct that low with juice, candy, or sugar, or in severe cases, an emergency injection, it can lead to seizures, coma, and death. The first few weeks were hard. I was adhering to a really strict no-carb diet, or at least low-carb diet. It was sinking in how miserable living that way was going to be. I was still angry about the whole thing. I was angry that everyone else just gets to eat what they want, when they want. Angry that I have to worry about things like seizures. Angry that I have to worry about not waking up from having a low blood sugar in my sleep and just going into a coma. Angry that I have to wear medical devices on my body. Angry that I have to pay for insulin for the rest of my life, and my life is always going to be dependent on the supply chain. Just angry. I wouldn't even say the word diabetes for a while. My husband jokingly referred to it as the D word. Fast forward a couple months, and I decided that I was ready to look and see what sort of community there is online. I found other type 1s my age on Instagram, and something amazing happened. I felt like I wasn't alone. It sounds really cliche, but it's hard to express how important that feeling is when you have a condition that makes you feel weird and alone. They also helped me realize I could still mostly eat normal things as long as I learn how to dose my insulin for those foods. So I can still have a treat if I want. I can still have a slice of cake. I can still have pizza. I just have to learn how to dose my insulin and, you know, the right timings for dosing. Lots of little nuances that make it doable, essentially. So that made the whole thing easier to accept at that point. And acceptance didn't come immediately. I did a lot of really intense therapy, both inpatient and outpatient for a while, and am still working on it with a long-term therapist that I now have. But for the first time in 4 months, I feel good about being a part of this community. I'm not embarrassed to wear my CGM, and I plan on wearing my insulin pump proudly out in the open when I get it. Knowing that there are other people my age that have lived with this disease since childhood or had the exact same experience I did being diagnosed in adulthood and ending up in the hospital with DKA. It made me feel like I'm actually a part of something. The online community I found made me see that there are thousands, maybe millions of people out there who have my back even though I'm a stranger, because we share a deep bond and understanding of each other's daily struggles. They've taught me so much in the last 4 months about managing my blood sugar and navigating insurance and all sorts of annoying things. So here I am now, taking it day by day. I am managing my blood sugar better than I thought I could. I actually brought my A1C down from 10.8 the first night in the emergency room to 6.3, which is pretty darn good. Doctors like you to be under 7 if you have diabetes, so the closer to 6 or even below 6 is phenomenal. Where was I? Diabetes will never be easy. That is one thing I'm glad people have been honest with me about. You know, other type 1s, they don't sugarcoat it. And I'm glad, because they'd be setting me up for failure expecting this disease to be perfectly controllable. It's more about learning how to just roll with the punches it throws at you. But I feel more positive about the future now. Having a brush with death made me realize how much I actually want my life. For the first time in probably 6 months, I am making plans and daydreaming about the future. I feel healthy. I'm strong. I can lift things again. I gained all the weight back that I had lost. I actually didn't realize how much I had lost until I ended up in the hospital and they weighed me, and I had lost almost 30 pounds in about 2.5 months. It was that rapid. So I've gained most of that back, for better or for worse. I have energy again, and I'm excited to go out and do things. I haven't felt depressed in probably about a month. And part of that, you know, could be the mental health resources that I have now. I've got a therapist, I'm medicated now. And I think part of it is also just all the weird silver linings that came out of this whole thing. Like realizing my life is important to me, you know, meeting people both online and people in person. I've made a lot of new friends in the last few months, you know, like through all these hospital goings-ons, and some of them I think are going to be friends probably for life. So it's a really weirdly horrible and traumatic experience, but some pretty cool things came out of it. So I'm thinking, since it's Diabetes Awareness Month, I might try to just make some more videos throughout the month to maybe like answer questions or educate people on the kinds of things that they've always wanted to know but didn't want to ask about diabetes. So if you made it this far, thanks for listening, and maybe I'll see you again soon.